Hello everyone, welcome back to Foot Forecast. In today's video, I'm going through my Premier League team of the season, as well as going through an underrated team of the season. So how it's going to work is I'm going to go through my main team of the season pick, and then I'm going to go through someone that I think is quite underrated. And this is going to most likely be from a side which isn't one of the biggest clubs in the Premier League. So anyway, let's get into this, and let's start off with the goalkeeper. And I think there are a couple of keepers you could discuss. The first one being Donnarumma, who's been good in goal for Manchester City this season. Then you've got Robin Roos, who I thought had a really good first half of the season for Sunderland. I think he has dropped off a little bit though in the second half. And then Jordan Pickford, who I think has consistently just been a very good keeper for Everton this season. But the keeper I've decided to go with is David Raya. I think it just is the clear choice, and it's not just because he's been part of the best defence in the league this season and the title winners in Arsenal. I think overall Raya has been the best keeper, and he's made some crucial saves for Arsenal. I think without him they would have really struggled to win the league this season. So I think he deserves to be the keeper in the Premier League team of the season. In terms of the under-the-radar pick, I considered some of the keepers that I nominated already, like Jordan Pickford or Robin Roos. But the one I've decided to go with is Carl Darlow in goal for Leeds. And the reason why is because I'm not sure if Roos and Pickford have really gone under the radar this season, but I think Darlow has. He's been very solid for Leeds in goal this season. Before Darlow came in, Leeds really struggled, as Malier, as you would expect, wasn't up for it, and same with Lucas Perry, who was the number one before Carl Darlow. So I'm on to the right back, and there's quite a few to discuss. You could look at someone like Matty Cash, who I think has been very solid for Villa this season. You could look at Michael Coyote, who's been very good at Brentford this season. Then you could look at someone like Reece James or Yuri and Timber. But the one I've decided to go with is Matheus Nunes. I think he's been brilliant for City this season, and I think he's been a very important player for them, and I think he deserves to be the team of the season right back. I think a lot of people would be saying Timber, and I understand this, but I think Nunes has just been slightly better than Timber this season. In terms of the underrated pick for the right back position, I'm between three players. So the first one is Matty Cash. I think he's gone under the radar this season. And then I've also got Jayden Bogle at Leeds. But the one I've decided to go with is actually sort of a midfielder, but he's played at right back this season, and that is James Garner. I think he's been brilliant for Everton this season, and because I've got a lot of midfielders to discuss, I decided to put him at right back, and I think he's gone under the radar, and I think this is proven by the fact that he hasn't been picked in that England squad already considered. A lot of people have been talking about the omissions of the likes of Harry Maguire, Lewis Hall, but no one's really been talking about Garner, despite him having a very good season for Everton. So I think he deserves to be the underrated pick. You could actually argue maybe he could have sneaked into the actual team of the season, but I just think there's too much quality in that Premier League midfield this season. So then on to the centre-halves, and there are some different centre-halves to definitely discuss with the likes of Mark Gahey, who was very good for Palace first half of the season and for Manchester City, but he has made the odd mistake for City. Then you've got Matthias de Ligt, who I actually think was really good for the first half of the season for Manchester United before getting injured, but obviously you can't pick a player that's been injured for half of the season. And then the other two are the Bournemouth centre-halves of Senesi and Hill, who I think have really stepped up the season, especially Marco Senesi, who's been outstanding all season. But I've decided to go with the two Arsenal centre-halves of Saliba and Gabriel, and I think this is just deserved. I think they have been the best two centre-halves this season. I think Gabriel in the first half of the season was the best centre-half by some distance, but in the second half, I think Saliba's actually been the better. He's been absolutely flawless, and I think no one's going to really argue with those two centre-halves being the two centre-halves in the team of this season. So then I've got my underrated picks for the centre-half, and I've got quite a few to discuss. The first one is James Hill, who I will be selecting in this 11. I can't quite believe how good he's really been for Bournemouth since coming in this season. He's been pretty much flawless, and I think he's gone under the radar this season. And then the next one I'm between is between Mavropanos, who I think has been very good for West Ham despite going down, or any of the Sunderland centre-halves this season. You've got Alderete, Ballard and Mukiele, who have all been very good. I think I'm going to go with the Sunderland centre-half, and the one I'm going to pick is Nordi Mukiele. So I'm on to the left backs, and I've got quite a few to discuss here. So different names I've got is Truffaut, who I think has been very good for Bournemouth this season. Mark Cucurella, who I thought was very good in the first half of the season, but he has dropped off like most of the Chelsea side. Then Hincapié and Calafiori for Arsenal, but they've almost split minutes, so I've sort of ruled those two players out. And then I actually think Lewis Hall for Newcastle was very good for a period of time, but he has sort of dropped off a bit recently, and he's obviously had some injury issues. But I just think there is one clear left back, and it has to be Nico O'Reilly. What a player he's been for Manchester City this season, been crucial for them really, and he's come up with some crucial moments for Manchester City this season. I think it's clear he has been the best left back in the league, and he's most likely going to be England's starting left back in the summer. What a breakthrough season for Nico O'Reilly. In terms of the under the radar left back pick, I've got three to discuss. One is Goodmanson at Leeds United. The other one is Truffaut at Bournemouth, and the third one is Nico Williams, who I just think has been really solid for Forest this season. But the one I've decided to pick is Gabriel Goodmanson at Leeds United. I think he still goes under the radar. I think he's had a very good season for Leeds, being very solid while offering an attacking outlet, and for that reason I'm going to be selecting Gabriel Goodmanson. But I wouldn't mind if you said Truffaut or Nico Williams, because I think they've both been very solid this season. So I'm on to the midfielders. I think there are three clear midfielders to select in the team this season. But in terms of some other midfielders that you could select, because the midfield area has been so strong this season, you could look at someone like Gibbs White. I personally ruled him out because I actually think he was rather poor in the first half of the season. He's really only picked up in the second half in the last 10 games, but his recent form has been very good. Bruno G, I think Bruno Guimaraes could have definitely got in if he didn't get injured in the second half of the season, because up to that point in the first half I thought he was outstanding. Alex Scott, very underrated for Bournemouth this season. Granit Xhaka, such an important player for Sunderland this season. What a signing he's been. James Garner, who I've obviously previously picked at right back in the underrated team of the season, and then Elliot Anderson, who's had an outstanding season with Nottingham Forest. But the midfield three I've decided to select is, first of all, Bruno Fernandes, Declan Rice, and Dominic Szoboszlai. I think this just is the clear three. I think it's that simple. I think Bruno Fernandes has been the best player in the league this season. I think Rice has been essential for Arsenal in their title-winning season. And I think Szoboszlai has been brilliant for a struggling Liverpool side. Some people may not pick Szoboszlai because Liverpool have underperformed so much, but I still think he's been brilliant. He's just come up with so many crucial moments for Liverpool this season. Really the only player that has stepped up for that side. Now let's look at some of the underrated picks you can look at for the underrated team this season. And a couple that I wanted to discuss was Alex Scott once again at Bournemouth, but I think there's players that are more underrated than him. Dewsbury Hall, who's had a very good season at Everton, and Enzo Lafay, but I'm going to discuss him in another position, as well as Ethan Ampadu. I think it consistently gives you a good 7 out of 10 every week for Leeds United. But my under-the-radar picks was, first of all, Matheus Fernandes, who's gone down with West Ham. But I think despite this, he's still had a very good season, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a move. He's been a shining light in a struggling Hammers side. Probably him, Somerville and Bowen are really the only three that have stepped up sort of in the attacking areas. Then the next pick that I'm going to go with is Anton Stack at Leeds United. I think he's brilliant as Stack, and I think he's been crucial for Leeds this season. And once again, I think he goes under the radar. I think a lot of people just think he's really good at free kicks, and that's basically it. But as the overall quality of the player is outstanding. And then finally, Noah Sadiki, who I think is probably the most underrated player in this whole team. I think he's absolutely outstanding, is Noah Sadiki, and he just continues to go underrated for Sunderland. And the reason why is because of the quality of Granit Xhaka, but Sadiki's been essential for them in midfield this season, and a huge reason why they finished in 7th place. So I'm on to the wingers for the main team of the season. I think this is probably the weakest position in the league this season. And if you look at some of the names, it probably does prove this. In terms of some potential picks you can look at Jared Bowen, who's actually come up with 20 goal contributions this season for West Ham in the league, which is really impressive. But I actually think at points he has underperformed. But in saying this, it has been a terrible side, but I'm not going to go with him. Then you've got Doku, who's been good, but he's just been injured for a lot of the season. Iliman and Jai's also been good for Everton, but I think at points he struggled. And then Cunha, who's been outstanding in the second half of the season, but in the first half I don't think he was as good. So that's why I haven't decided to select those two wingers. The wingers I've decided to select is, first of all, Harry Wilson, who I think has been brilliant for Fulham this season and probably earns himself a very good move to another Premier League side. He has dropped off probably a bit in the last 10 games, but before that he was outstanding for Fulham, continuously coming up with crucial goals for them, and you just couldn't stop him at one point. So that's why he's my right winger. And then for the left winger, I've decided to go with Antoine Semenyo. I think he's probably the only standout sort of winger in the Premier League this season, so this was a simple pick for me. Now let's look at the underrated picks for the wingers. And once again, I did struggle with wingers in terms of some underrated players. But the ones I basically decided to go with are basically midfielders that play out wide. So the first one is Enzo Laffi, who I previously discussed. I think he's been brilliant for Sunderland. Really made that step up from the Championship to the Premier League. In fact, I would say he's actually improved in the Premier League, which is surprising. And then on the right, I've decided to select John McGinn. I think he's been brilliant for Villa this season when available. He has had some injury problems, but I actually think those injuries prove how good he's been for Villa this season, because without John McGinn, they're just a completely different side, and he offers so much leadership on the pitch. For me, he's still such an underrated player, and he just always goes under the radar, does John McGinn. He's probably one of the most essential players in the league for his side. He's absolutely brilliant, is McGinn. Then I'm onto the striker position. I think it's clear it's between two players. There are some players that have had decent season at points. For example, Ollie Watkins has come up with 16 goals this season, but he was actually crap for the first half of the season, so there's no way I'm putting him in. Then you've got João Pedro, who's been good at Chelsea, but once again, I don't think he's been that consistent throughout for Chelsea, but he's still been very good for them. And finally, DCL, once again, the issue is consistency. So for me, it's between two strikers, one being Igor Thiago and the other being Erling Haaland. I think Haaland has struggled a bit in the second half of the season, but I'm still selecting him over Igor Thiago. And why? I thought Erling Haaland was outstanding in the first half of the season, and I thought he was actually probably the player of the season. And for that reason, I just can't ignore Erling Haaland. As well as this, he scored 27 goals and only 3 of those were penalties. I think a lot of people will be screaming at Igor Thiago, and look, I understand that he scored 22 goals for Brentford, but I still think Haaland's been better, and 8 of those Igor Thiago goals were penalties, so I think you've got to take that into account. So then finally, I've got the under-radar pick, and it's between 3 players. One, Brian Robbie. He's only scored 7 goals, but I just think he offers so much that Sunderland attack, and his hold-up play is brilliant. Then I've got Krupi, who scored 13 goals for Bournemouth, and a lot of that coming off the bench. He's been brilliant. But the one I've decided to go with is Zion Fleming at Burnley. He scored 11 goals in a crap Burnley side, and he hasn't actually played a whole lot of the season, as they were using other options instead of him. And I would say that Fleming's probably earns a move away from Burnley. I think he's been brilliant for them, and he's actually gone a bit under the radar for them throughout, as people just assume that whole Burnley side is crap, but he's actually quite a good player, and he's outstanding in the air. I'd be shocked if a Premier League side doesn't go in for Fleming in the summer, or at least one of the sides coming up from the Championship. So that is the end of this video, where I've gone through my Premier League team of the season, as well as my under-radar team of the season / underrated. Let me know where you agree, where you disagree, and if you enjoy this video, it'd be great if you could subscribe to this channel, as well as liking the video.